Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Ryan.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Spectacular. I'm feeling fanciful and free. I'm just ready to go into this. Are you ready, Freddie?
Yeah.
Oh, she sounds ready. Did you hear that mild-mannered yeah? Rachel, we're YumYumPodcast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is it strange to you that we have the market on a few of the Babylon 5 podcasting things? We're the only Australian Babylon 5 podcast in the solar system. We're the only married couple who's talking about Babylon 5. And we're the only good one. I mean, how does that feel?
Well, two of those are facts and one of those is an opinion.
Okay, we're not in the only Australian Babylon 5 podcast in the solar system. I don't know what they're doing on Neptune, so they could be podcasting on there. But Rachel, why are we called Yum Yum? For those who aren't in the know, those who need a bit of a reminding perhaps, what's Yum Yum about?
And I apologize to those of you who listen every week and hear this same thing.
No, they message me and say, I love it.
We're named Yum Yum because Ryan decided that it should be so after we watched an episode of Star Trek Discovery where a individual... Don't pretend to cry, you fuckwit.
I'm so sad because Discovery's ending. It's going to end. And I hope...
It was always going to end.
But it's now official, and I hope that the final line of the show is Yum Yum.
You know it's not going to be.
No, it's going to be Michael's crying face, smiling at the crew, and then it'll end.
That's not a line.
No, I don't know what the final line... The final line will be Let's Fly, or something boring again.
Yeah.
It will be Michael Burnham turns to the camera and just says, and the moral of the story was, I was right the entire time. And then she winks.
I was wrong to have a god complex, but I was justified in it. No, Commander 9D says yum yum, and it makes no sense. But it was thoroughly entertaining, and we weren't the same afterwards.
No.
So you named this podcast after it.
Because we wanted to be entertaining, but we're not going to just be entertaining all by ourselves for this particular discussion, because we had to drag in another Babylon 5 podcasting person, somebody who's seen the show before, somebody who's even been on this particular podcast before. We have Ben from the Last Best Babylon 5 podcast. We had to bring in the final Babylon boy to come on for season 4 discussion. Ben, how are you doing?
After hearing what you said about other Babylon 5 podcasts, I just have to ask, what am I? Chopped flarn?
A lifestyle podcast. That's what you are.
Oh, yeah.
I got you. I got you.
You got trapped by your own joke.
Ben's that guy who's like, I put the bear trap down here, look around. Oh no, I stepped in it. Oh, but you're a lifestyle podcast, aren't you? What lifestyle are you doing right now? I'm not too sure. Where are you up to?
It is answers. We're searching for answers.
That's it. No more clarification.
Yeah.
Listen to the Last Best Babylon 5 podcast because you guys, your first timing through it, you, Ben, have seen it before, but your other two hosts, they haven't seen the show. Is that right?
That is correct.
Well, that was good and cryptic.
Rachel, what episode of Babylon 5 are we talking about today?
Lines of communication. Sheridan lays the groundwork for the broadcasts that will counter ISN disinformation. Meanwhile, Franklin and Marcus try to win the support of the Mars resistance.
Oh, does Delenn get a plot in the episode?
It's not mentioned.
I guess she doesn't get one. It's not like she's a strong, important character that they they emphasize in the episode that she's her own person with her own needs.
Multiple meanwhile.
Oh, you can't go meanwhile two times. No, you can't. That's wrong. So for everyone out there listening, if you have not watched Babylon 5 before, we recommend you do because we are all rewatching it as we're talking about it. When it comes to the history of mine, when it comes to the lines of communication, I have actually quite a fuzzy memory of this. I embellish things things that happen in this more than that's actually present. So for me, whenever I think of Ivanova in season 4, I always think of this voice of the resistance thing being far more of an overwhelming storyline for her rather than just a thing she does. And that is kind of the complaint I have with lines of communication. It's the start of her doing that. So in my brain, I always remember this being a major emphasis of the plot and being a major turning point for the character of Ivanova. But what I've come to realize, at least in late season 3 to season 4, Ivanova's this character that I feel JMS doesn't know what to do with, and so his solution to that is just for Sheridan to throw random odd jobs at her, and that will fill in the stuff that she does. And I'll be honest, damn, it works, because even now, I still think of her doing this being a major thing of the character rather than just something that happens. Rachel,
doesn't happen to her, even though that is objectively what it is, because of the way that Ivanova's character has been built up. It's just like, nope. She still has agency somehow.
For you, Rachel, lines of communication, how is this one stuck in your brain?
It doesn't. It doesn't. I'm like, I remember that these things happen, but I forget that they're all packaged in a particular episode.
I also think of it as Racing Mars Part 2 because it's a further bromance of Franklin and Marcus. So I also merge it together with that previous episode that we discussed.
Yeah.
Now,
I always think that he gets to fuck number 1 in Racing Mars.
In the same episode he meets her in, right?
No.
Because they have that overwhelming flirtatious energy.
Yeah.
But I guess you got to spread that out. You got to have 2 episodes in a row of people listening to other people fuck. You got to spread that out. You got to double that up. It's weird that it isn't done 3 times. You know, the rule of 3s. But hey, maybe it's in the next episode. Maybe Garibaldi listens into Lise. I don't know. Now, Ben, we brought you on for lines of communication, I'll be honest, mainly in part because I think of it as just a little fun time where we got some weird alien shenanigans and also some Marcus and Franklin action. But what has been your history and relationship with this one?
I'll join the choir here. This is definitely one that, like, when we were watching the 4th, as we're rewatching the 4th season, this kind of interim between the 2 wars that pretty much make up the 4th season, like the squishy middle between those 2, I like the Racing Mars is the most distinct episode of all of them, I would say. And I would agree with you, Ryan, that this does feel like part 2 of Racing Mars. Like, in fact, it has, like, some of this I kind of was like, oh, I remember this being in Racing Mars. But yeah, it's just like, I think the episodes between like the conclusion of the Shadow War and the start of, like, the Civil War, like, kind of feel like a whole bunch of strands of plots that need to get advanced, and each episode just kind of moves the ball forward. And
isn't that a modern problem with TV? Like,
it is.
This wasn't
It's
a problem
absolutely a modern problem. And, like, the later, like,
good
the
on
war
you, JMS.
episodes are...
You were ahead of the curve when you came to TV storytelling, including finding the random wheel-spinning problems of modern serialized storytelling. Good job, buddy. You did it.
You don't get this with episodic things.
You barely get this with Deep Space Nine, which also was doing serialized stuff, because it will also just have random, like, here's a Ferengi episode in there.
I would say that also, like, a thing that we complained about with this run of episodes specifically, on our podcast is, and this episode has a few of them, is in order to bridge these various disparate plots together, they have, like, these hackneyed, things where somebody says something that's the opposite of what's happening in the other plot, or like an awry or ironic take on something, like, oh, I bet Dr. Franklin has his hands full, like something
Cut
like
to,
that.
he has his hands literally full of something.
Yeah.
Someone.
And-
or the
and
classic,
they do that for
I'm
like
sure
3 or
it's
4
all
episodes
nice
in a
and
row.
sleepy on Babylon 5. Cut to Sheridan is awake.
There's a third one as well.
Mhm. There's many of those. I will say this, though. I just want to ask this because I haven't noticed this until listening to your discussions, but I do want to know from both of you, do you think that's actually a problem of writing, or do you think it's because we're here analyzing it? Because I will say, Rachel, we're watching The Sopranos right now. And every episode of The Sopranos has 1 or 2 of those exact same writing tricks as well. And yet I don't give a shit in that show. And I personally don't give a shit in Babylon 5 either. But what do you think about that, Ben? Do you think it's just the fact that we are here each week having to break down a 45-minute episode over the course of 2 hours?
I mean, yeah, like it's if you're like, when I'm watching The Sopranos, not being someone that has a podcast about it, when I'm watching The Sopranos, or when I'm watching this, I'm like sitting with like a Microsoft Notepad open, and I'm like taking like detailed notes of every single scene, and I'm watching it in a way so that when, I'm podcasting it later, I have everything right there in front of me. So I'm going to I'm much more attuned to stuff like that. Whereas if I have The Sopranos on, I'm just like, hell yeah, I love The Sopranos.
Right. And I think season 4 of Babylon 5 lives in that world where there's so much of the attitude of all killer, no filler. As somebody who has to look at it, you have to look at how come it is that way. And I think this is a storytelling mechanism that very much has that to it, because in season 3, we would be afforded episodes like King Arthur came to the station, or Parasites take over the homeless, or whatever it is. No matter the quality,
was good.
Yeah, but I'm saying, but no matter the quality, you would have episodes that would take a breather from the usual writing machinations that you have to have when you are propelling a plot forward, like in this particular episode, or this season as a whole.
I also want to add that it's a side effect, at least for me, that JMS writes all of these episodes.
Yes.
Because he does them in the same way. So they feel so familiar every time they happen.
Yeah.
Because it's like the exact same beats.
But here's my argument to that, because I get this. The truth is, though, I have not missed having guest writers. I was thinking about it, but then I look back over the guest writers episodes, and they were universally the weaker ones of the season.
You don't miss Larry?
Larry DiTilio from time to time was good, but he never gave me the best episode. David Gerald had Believers, and I think that's the most standout of a guest writer coming in and doing something.
I look forward to
Neil Gaiman. But I don't miss it in a way.
David's 2 episodes are good.
Peter David, I liked Soulmates. I didn't like There All the Honor Lies all that much, nor did you, actually, on your podcast.
That's,
you guys really,
all right.
really
I just
didn't like
remembered
that one.
Soulmates. I forgot what the other one was.
Yeah, you made a gamble and you failed.
Yeah, I rolled the dice on that one. But I did we loved Soulmates.
But whatever you may think of me, Doctor, I have some principles that even 20 years with Londo can't erase. I do not like to win my battles this way. I find it vaguely unsatisfying.
When it comes to JMS and those writing tricks, one of the things I really appreciate about lines of communication, and I think you talked about, Ben, this squishy middle part of season 4 is made up of a lot of episodes with many little plots happening, rather than a B plot or just a plot, where you have lots of little plots. And what I think he's really attuned at, something that many of the sci-fi contemporaries failed at doing, is connecting the plots together via themes and recurring ideas, rather than having some other hackney way of doing it or not doing it at all. I always think of TNG, where you have that episode where Data finds a girlfriend, and then the other plot is just some random sci-fi thing about parts of the ship are making people phase through it and they die. It's like, what does that have to do with anything? It's like, well, we're a sci-fi show. We have to have the overt sci-fi plot to counter this. It's like, oh, okay.
Data's Day.
No, Data's Day is the one with Keiko and O'Brien getting married, and he's going around making a journal about it.
That's What's the one.
It's the one where Patrick Stewart directed it for the first time. It's the one where Data gets a girlfriend. It's in season 4, I'm pretty sure. But the point is, I appreciate that JMS doesn't feel the need to either just have a random plot for sci-fi's sake or to have the characters converge at one another for all of the plots to exist. I like that there's a thematic resonance throughout this entire episode, that there's this ongoing idea of resistance and how each plot is dealing with that, how each plot is dealing with what happens when civil unrest is going on and how do you take action against that and what does the road towards that look like? Rachel, for you, what did you think about that? Because we've been hitting that drum a little bit louder and louder over the last couple of episodes about how JMS is really tying things together via the themes, which is something B5 didn't always used to do.
No, and it's built up over time, so it doesn't feel like that stark of a contrast because it's been a very gradual change. And I think that that's aligned pretty neatly with the shift towards the serialization. And I think it's a tool that he knows that he needs in order to enable the serialization, because you can't always have it directly connected. So you need a different way to weave everything together.
Another aspect I really appreciated on, yes, the themes, but also a character thing I really liked is Sheridan is worried about his people, but specifically Delenn. And then we have Delenn's plot where she's also deeply concerned about the things that matters to her the most, which is her own society. She puts herself in the role of, I am a leader of my people, while Sheridan is struggling with having to be the leader of his people, but mainly he's concerned about being the partner to somebody else. And I think that also goes into Marcus and Franklin, where it's like Franklin isn't even aware that he can be a guy that can look at that kind of beauty when it passes him by, but Marcus is aware. So even on a character level, those little personal things bleed over, as well as the bigger themes of resistance and the world building of we get Mars over here and we get the Drakh over here and chaos is spreading. JMS never forgets that what makes a show important is the people inhabiting it rather than the world itself. Now, Ben, what do you think about how Season 4 has been handling that evolution of serialization and tying all of these little plots together with themes and character beats?
The squishy middle, the meat of the Season 4 sandwich, I on this rewatch, these episodes are a little less memorable, a little less distinct to me. But as you said earlier, it that's a problem that all of these shows had. That said, like it nails, like, this season, and we all know this. It's probably why we each have podcasts, because we're so excited to get to this part. Like, it makes sure to get all of the good stuff exactly right. So I'm fine with an episode like this, especially because it pays off down the line. Obviously, we've already heard of the Drakh, as Delenn puts it. But now, but now we're seeing them, or one of them anyway. And all of that will pay off. And we also start to get into, now we're nicely set up also for, the Mbryo plot, which will be the next 2 episodes, next 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The next few.
And so, and those episodes are very entertaining. In fact, it will probably, or maybe around the same time this podcast comes out, you discussing one of those episodes will also be out with us.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like we've said, this does sit in this weird little middle place that we have often seen modern television have. There's so many shows I love, but when I point to episode 5 or 6 or 7 of the season, I go, they happened, they were important. It is that thing of there is a level of you have to eat your vegetables to get the steak. But unlike with season 1, where there's the level of you have to eat your vegetables to get all of the stuff to pay off, it isn't as overwhelming and the quality isn't as fluctuating with it. It is just, this episode, it's perfectly fine. It has some amazing lines of dialogue. It has some beautiful sequences. Some of my favorite Marcus material is in this episode. So it's not without any merit, but at the same time, it isn't standing out. But there is that thing of, that's okay, as long as it actually adds up to something. But as a viewer, sometimes you get frustrated that television can be so calculating like that. Like, this is the episode where it's like, you got to put your building blocks over here so that the next episode can make sense. It can get a little bit tiresome. And sometimes you miss the days of an episode where it was just a fun little thing where, hey, here's a random story about this. Heck, Babylon 5 could have very hard-hitting episodes that were one-and-dones. Confessions and Lamentations is one of my favorite episodes, and it was just a single story that happened. And we don't get that anymore. And I don't feel too sad about that.
In a season.
Yeah, we don't get, but even then, a lot of them still bleed into one another. It's not the same as season 1 and 2 and early season 3.
That's true, unfortunately. Season 5 might have been improved if they if it went into the episodic well a little bit more.
You say that now, but wait until you see those episodic episodes again.
Now the fun really starts.
On the next Babylon 5.
Ivanova is here, by the way, because Sheridan has a job for her to do.
And I'll say it. She looks hot.
Sheridan hasn't noticed.
Someone had to say it because, Sheridan didn't.
She's wearing a black robe, not her usual blue one.
Did she stop wearing the blue one after Talia left? Because she would always wear that when Talia was around. Now Talia's gone. I wonder if she's retired her blue silky, negligee. I wonder if she said that part of my life is over now. Oh, if only when they had the ceremonies of light and dark, she handed, instead of her previous uniform over, she handed that over to Delenn when she was in the sickbay and then said, I think I love Talia, and then walked off. And then Delenn would look at this nightie and be like, okay, I don't know what this is about, but thank you. Now, Rachel, what do you think about this? Because I think we're both on the same page that this element for Ivanova sticks out in our brains a lot when it comes to season 4, but it's not actually that big of a thing, but it is set up here.
No, it's not a huge moment, but it is important.
It's following up on the events of The Illusion of Truth, an episode that just keeps ringing out over the season. This is like the 3rd time we've circled back to The Illusion of Truth and ISN screwing over Babylon 5 and the characters finding ways to counteract that.
So many times of John angrily watching ISN. That's just a feature of his personality now.
I do appreciate that he does get information from it, though. Like, he finds little seeds and kernels in there, and it helps spark him to come up with solutions of his own. Hence, the whole voice of the resistance and the lines of communication. Now, Ben, what do you think about this? Because the voice of the resistance is something that is also calling back to the days of the Shadow War, where Ivanova would be this face giving information. So this little plot here is JMS again bringing in a bunch of old ideas in previous episodes and merging it into a new story in itself. What do you think about it?
It's a fun plot. It's also it's a fun. It's really funny that they're like, well, we're done with the war room, and then literally like it's not that many episodes in the future that they just start using it as a war room again. Like very quickly, in fact, after she sets up the studio. But no, I enjoy this plot. It's because she, like, Ivanova is it is interesting what it is that she gets and what her jobs are. And I think this is it's a fun job, and it's also like for her, especially because I mean, I think part of the joke of her character is that there's very little she actually like. She's generally grouchy about any job she gets. It's like generally like she likes being there for the fight. That's a big thing that she makes very, very clear. But like most of the other duties, she's very grouchy about.
Mainly because Sheridan just dumps them on her. When Sinclair would give her a job, it's because it was suited to her. Sheridan will come over with a big old... See, I've argued this on the pod, and I want to hear your takes. Do you think Sheridan is a good boss, and B, a boss that you would like to have?
I've had a boss like Sheridan. In that he's and I'll explain this. In that he saved the planet. But also no, like a guy that just like kind of comes in, has this very big can-do attitude, and what he does, he has like this, oh geez, aw shucks attitude, and we're all going to do this, and the way that he manifests that is just like announcing this is what we're doing, and everybody in the room is like, are you sure? And he's just like, yeah, this is what we're doing. All right, here we go. And it just becomes, okay, fine, I guess. And
I've said this.
Fucking do it.
What bothers me about Sheridan as a boss, and like what would make me annoyed is, see, he does that. What I think he does, and he does this to Ivanova all the time. He comes over with a big smile on his face, that friendly demeanor. He's Mr. I'm your friend. We get on. I'm a good guy. You know that. Oh, that's awesome. I'm buttering you up now. That's wonderful. Hey, I've got a job I don't want to do that I could easily do, but I don't want to do it. Could you do it? You're capable of doing it. And he motivates them to do it. But Sheridan does not like doing his job. Talking about Ivanova being a grouch, Sheridan has made it very open that Babylon 5 is a job that he's not interested in doing, but he will enforce it because that's what he has to do. He has a moral obligation. But he's not like Sinclair, where Sinclair believed in the job and like what it could do. Sheridan is very much... you do it. And here he is mulling over this voice of the resistance. He's like, I got it. I'll make Ivanova do it.
I think
She'll
also
do it because that's her job.
I think also Sheridan feels that he has that leeway where Sinclair didn't, because he has a past relationship with Ivanova, and I think that makes him feel like he has the leeway to be more a jerk to her in a way, like where Sinclair, like they're both kind of, sensitive people that care about other people's feelings. But in Sinclair's case, Ivanova's new to him. Like Garibaldi's his friend. Ivanova is new to him. And so he gives her like kind of a wide berth. And like, when she's mourning her father, or refusing to mourn her father, rather, like he kind of stays out of, like he's just kind of, like he's aware, but he doesn't quite know how to handle it. Whereas Sheridan would immediately be up her ass. And
Sinclair was Mr. I want to talk to you about your father. Oh, I don't want to do that. Sit down, Ivanova. I don't want to do that. I order you to sit down. Okay. That was Sinclair's approach, but he was a genuine guy about it. So, see, the thing I find interesting about Sheridan, too, is we meet him when Ivanova is already a character we know pretty well, so
which does make it feel different.
It makes it feel different because when we meet Sinclair, we're also meeting Ivanova around the same time. They're all new people to us, so you can form that relationship with the audience along the way. But Sheridan, he has to come in and be like, I'm your friend, and my dynamic is I'm going to give everyone else my job because I don't want to do it, and I'd rather be abducted by aliens and hit them with a pipe because I want to be Captain Kirk rather than a diplomat. But one of the things I really adore about this particular episode, and it made me think about this, Ivanova has that exchange where it's about how she has a face that people can trust. And she says, I'd rather have a face that people fear. And it made me think about how that was Ivanova's character for season 1, where season 1 Ivanova was very, very abrasive and harsh, and Ivanova is God. And over the course of the show, they've softened her character. They've made her far more comedic, far more friendly, but still has that true hard edge to her that you don't want to mess with me and I'm right and I'm a boss. But I've really liked how the series has slowly over the course of itself made her far more warm of a character without making her a weak character, without removing the teeth that she has always had, because you have to develop her, you have to grow her. You can't just have her be the Ivanova from season 1 all the time. You have to have some growth. What do you think about just Ivanova's growth over the show, Rachel? Because we haven't talked about it in a little bit. What do you think about how she's changed from the Ivanova who will twist your head off and use it as a chamber pot to the one who's now just begrudgingly like, oh, come on, John, do you think I should get dressed first at least?
Yeah, there's that sense of them being comfortable with each other in a different way than she was with Sinclair. And I appreciate it, but I also I acknowledge that there is growth. But it's not like those things that were more present are not part of her anymore. We're not seeing her in those contexts as much. We're not seeing her with Corwin. She would probably still be like that. And we get a glimpse of that when she's talking to the runners.
The arms dealers from the previous episode. And another part too is their job is different now. Like in season 1 and season 2, they were Earth Force officers and they had to put up that prestige and that thing. But now things are different. Yeah. They're in this period where it's like we make up the rules. We get to do it and we get to form our own understanding of what hierarchy is. And also you team up with Marcus, who just annoys the shit out of her. So he can be the punching bag for Ivanova's more gruff side. Ben, what do you think about just how Ivanova has evolved over the course of the show? Because, really that line about I want to be the face of fear was very much a flashback to, that's what she really was like in season 1.
Like you mentioned that it doesn't really sell her out. Like, she's the same character that she's been this whole time. I think as Rachel said, we've gotten to know her, and her relationship with Sheridan is definitively different. I think it's also that she's opened up a little bit because she's had, she's especially closed off in the first season because she has these big secrets that are hidden from the other command staff. Like Sinclair doesn't know the telepath stuff, which is a pretty so she has to be remarkably guarded. So now over the course of the show, she Sheridan knows this about her, and now they've gone through, a lot of stuff together. And so she's a bit more at ease, whereas I think it's also her character evolves even without the secrets in over the course of the first season. Her that's one of the great storylines in the first season, including in TKO, including in TKO, is her kind of coming to some semblance of a peace with her father. And so I think she's able to be a little bit more at ease with these people because she's kind of confronting over the course of the show all of these personal demons that she has. And so by this point, not to say any of those things are actually resolved, having a traumatic upbringing, which
that gets brought up in season 4 as well, when she's like, I want to be on the fight because here's a story about my mother, and it's like, oh no, please, it's sad again. Ivanova is sad. I think the truth too is in season 1, JMS was writing for the imagined character of Ivanova, and from season 2 onwards, he's writing more for Claudia Christian. Like, he knows who she is, what she's capable of, as well as making it because season 1 was all about Ivanova's Russian and Jewish and a stone lady, and now it's more than that. It's evolved into a bit more because he knows this actor more, and he's given her more stuff that she's better at.
I want to build a bit on what Ben said, and note the fact that she's different because she's more at ease with herself as well, now that she has dealt with those things.
And what am I, chopped Florin? I mean, okay, granted, I don't have any interest in you, you don't have any interest in me, but if you're going to come barging in here in the middle of the night, the least you could say is, nice outfit, Ivanova, and then go on a tear.
Yeah, nice outfit, Ivanova.
I love Sheridan in this episode. He's such a weird character. Like, I've come to realize that I have been so persuaded over the years about like him as a cool sci-fi lead guy. Like, he's the sexy guy from Tron, and he's got that voice, and he can do the big speeches, and he nukes people. Like, John uses nukes and all that. But one of the things that I'm really loving on this watch is John is a fucking weirdo. Like, he's such a dork and a cutie. Like,
he's a conspiracy theory.
He's a conspiracy theorist.
I was going to bring up the conspiracy theorist, but does that ever really
he still brings that every now and then, that he likes his little theories on things. I mean, that's also how he can come up with, of course, Earth is doing this. I mean, him in this episode, he's very conspiracy theorist, like watching the news for secret messages is very much in line with that. And what I really wanted to touch on is John's reactions in this episode specifically, but we will see it over the next couple, of his relationship with Delenn, and how he is very much the type of person who defines himself via the person he's in a relationship with. We saw that with Anna in the second episode he was in, where he still mourns for her. He doesn't know how he can operate without her. He's like, I had my wife and my job, and now all I have is my job. And now we see him again with somebody he's in love with. And in this episode, she has to leave, and he still thinks, no, you can stay, get Lanier to go do it. And she has to remind him, hey, John, I'm a person. I have a life. I have a role to play. Like, don't forget that I'm a badass bitch. Yeah, don't forget that.
Don't forget who I was. And I love their exchange when it comes to, would you want it to make a difference? And he's like, no.
John is somebody that, Rachel, you're always a big fan of because of the relationship he has with Delenn. And we've talked about the courting. Now we are in the committed relationship. I just want to hear a bit from you as somebody who also watches a lot of media that is about romance. I would say a lot of it is always about the will they, won't they, will they finally get together? Hey, Farscape, it's our two lead characters. Will they finally get together? Oh wait, it's the season finale. It's a series finale. Freeze frame to be continued, and then Peacekeeper Wars will do it in a quick mad rush.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about when a TV show actually sits down and says, okay, they're in the relationship, and how do you feel about how B5 handles it?
I like it. I think it's very sweet. I know the B5 boys made fun of this, but I like it. That he's just like, I was going to call you so that we could arrange a date. Because, they're busy people and they don't get to see each other very regularly. It's not like they can set up a Friday night as date night and we go out to open air every week.
Yeah.
The fact that he still wants to ask, that he doesn't assume, I think is very sweet, and he wants to make it special every time. I like it.
When it comes to how Delenn and Sheridan react in their individual plots, it says so much about their dynamic in the relationship, because Sheridan is clearly gutted that she's leaving and that she may not come back with how everything is going on. And so when we see him in his plot, it's him overcompensating.
Yes.
It's him pivoting to, I've got to do my job. I've got to be my job. I've got to get a Voniver at the middle of the night to go do this, because if I stop for a moment, I might have to actually deal with the fact that the love of my life isn't here. And that's hard to deal with. So I'm just going to just go into my work. And then, but him doing that, you can see on his face that he's still thinking about Delenn. While Delenn, she's capable of that separation. She's capable of saying, John is back there, I will miss him, but I have more important things to do than worry about solely that relationship that I have, because I have more things on my plates.
Well, he's his her cute kid.
Yeah. I would say also in some relationships, I would say definitely in ours, Rachel, there is that dynamic where you are very much the John and I'm very much the Delenn, where it's like, I can spend a day and I don't have to text you saying, I love you, but you can't. You have to do that. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying like that's a thing in some relationships where it's like that connection.
I was more of a Delenn, and then I got home and you were like, you didn't message me.
Yeah, that's true.
There's
like Delenn would.
That was a big discussion in the late 90s. Are you a John or a Delenn? Much like how people were either a Marilyn or a Jackie in the early 60s.
Yes, or a Ross and a Rachel.
Yeah.
Ben, what? That was a genuine discussion in the 90s, Ross or Rachel.
That is true.
That is true. I'm not lying. I was there.
Or no, wait,
right,
are you a Ross or... Yeah, all right. You know what? I never watched Friends, believe it or not.
Wow.
Seinfeldman.
Ben, what do you think about just the John and Delenn relationship and how the two characters react to the fact that they're having to separate? Because this is a thing that will last for a few episodes as well.
Yeah, I was thinking about that watching it this time. And it's funny, I think, and I might have said it on this podcast before, I've definitely... said this. I think there's a reputation. Their relationship has kind of a reputation among Babylon 5 fans is not particularly that there isn't a lot of juice there. But I always thought they were very sweet together. At least I'm really thinking so on this current watch through where I just. Like, they're two working adults, as Rachel was discussing, like they have to find time in their remarkably busy schedules. And they also have extremely different ways of expressing, their love for each other, including like, as is kind of I don't know if it's a running plot or a running, like just kind of a runner of the various Mbryo rituals across the season, and I think a little bit of the third. But even beyond that, it's just that they have different ways of expressing their appreciation for each other, and that is like we handed to JMS sometimes that he's able to write like these kind of very adult kind of circumstances in a very sensitive and interesting way.
He's a romantic.
Yeah, he's definitely a romantic. Yeah,
which is surprising because of how cynical the show can be, and also if you know anything about JMS's personal
how his
life.
marriage went during the film, or during this season.
During the show.
It was on hold.
Yeah, and it's even weirder if you read her book that she wrote for Babylon 5, To Dream in the City of Sorrows, where it's a book about Catherine Sakai trying to go back in time and be with the love of her life, and it's really difficult. And it's like, yeah, you're writing about trying to get with JMS, but he's too busy being God, basically, of this world that he's ruling. And I think I really love how in science fiction TV a lot, actually, that the male characters in the romance are very vulnerable and very open, and we actually get to see how love impacts them a lot. Delenn and John, or John Crichton and Aaron Sun, or even Cisco and Cassidy. And it's like, there's so many of these sci-fi romances where the guy is stumbling over his words and he's the one that's emotionally vulnerable. And I actually like that a lot. I actually don't get a lot of that in other pieces of media I watch, like in a sitcom or a drama. It's usually given to the women to be that all the time. But I actually really, really like how here in B5, you have this scene where he's basically, without saying it directly, but he's basically begging her to stay because he loves her. And I can't help but think about how that is just a commonplace within the sci-fi TV genre of this era. A part of me also dreads that if this scene was made today, you would have those freaks on the internet being like, oh, what a weak man he is, blah, blah, blah. But I like that Sheridan is just this puppy dog of a man who just can't help but wear his heart on his sleeve. And it's been that since the very moment we met the guy. Like, it's always been there. And I think that's a difference between him and Sinclair. Sinclair could put that to this, like, he could put that in a little box and open that up later. While Sheridan, he can't help. That's his thing.
Yeah.
He's a lover and a fighter, but mainly he's a lover. He's like, oh man, I just want to hold hands.
He's a fighter in order to protect what he loves.
I mean,
He's
Sheridan...
not a lover of the fight the way that Ivanova is.
No.
Sheridan takes his... he's not actively pursuing sex in a way that Sinclair gets laid like in the pilot and like immediately Sinclair is someone who's absolutely fine with casual sex in a way that I can't imagine Sheridan ever being.
No. I mean, Ben, you've watched a lot of science fiction television and just TV in general. I mean, how do you feel about the men in these shows? Because I don't know, I've just noticed that being a recurring trait, that there's a lot of them that are just, they're the open ones in the relationship a lot more than you'd expect.
I don't have a great answer for it because this isn't something like, so yeah, like so you brought up so John and Aaron you brought up, and that's definitely a case of like he's the more, like, by design, he's the more emotionally available one. Like, that's specifically their entire plot over 4 years in a movie. Yeah, I mean, come to think of it, like, and maybe for all of them, they're like, oh, we're subverting a trope, but they're all doing it.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think it makes the sci-fi lead more interesting, more vulnerable and human.
Can't you send out Lanier? It might be dangerous.
John, it pleases me that you care for what I have become. Never forget who I was, what I am, and what I can do.
Let's get to Delenn and her dumb Minbari friend, and this is where the episode falls apart for me. I've always went, this is insane. This
absolutely this, and I mean, you know, we were obsessed with this. This guy is this guy is very dim.
Well, Ben, why don't you tell us what's happening in Delenn's plot?
All right, so in Delenn's plot, I forget the name of who's her this one episode guy.
Farrell.
That's right.
How could you forget? Never forget.
And Farrell, of course, is like he's like, remember that Colonial Day, the Battlestar Galactica episode where we meet Laura Roslind's very best friend, who's very, very close with her.
Yes.
It's there for exactly one episode. We never see him again. Must have died on New Caprica. Anyway, like he's like that. Like, so it's like, oh, this trusted old friend of Delenn's, and so the plot is like, well, you know, there's all of this these agrarian aliens that the Minbari religious caste had pledged to protect are being harassed by raiders, and Delenn brings out a fleet of White Stars to go investigate this, and Raiders are harassing the Pakmara, I believe.
They're attacking a bunch of League and non-aligned worlds, as we find out during the episode. From Sheridan's end, thanks to the Voice of Resistance getting its tendrils out there, that it's actually happening across the place, actually. But this is the first that Delen's hearing about this because, well, the religious caste, and there's no Grey Council anymore, information is being withheld. It's being stifled because no one's wanting to spread any information. And if they do, they don't believe it because it's against our way of life, because a part of it too is there's a civil unrest happening on Minbar. The warriors are taking over cities, and they're not killing people, but they're leaving them in situations where they can die. And that's just so unfathomable that people just aren't believing it at face value at all. So Delenn is having to deal with this random raider problem, but along the way, we learn how that problem is just a part of a bigger issue at play with Minbar.
Yeah, Pharrell so he reveals this information, and that the warrior caste is taking over these cities and not directly killing religious caste members, but kicking them out of their homes and leaving them to die.
Including his family.
Yes. And so he says, but don't worry, I have found the perfect ally that will help us in our fight against the warrior caste.
Not suspicious at all.
Like, it's just very funny because this is a show that could be very smart and adult and
this is like a season 1 idiot. Like, this is an idiot from season 1 who's like, hey, I've teamed up with these guys called who are pro-Earth. I'm sure they'll be fine. Yeah, I'm wearing an armband, but it'll be fine. Like, that period of naivete should be over, but it isn't for this dumbass. And if they revealed, I've always thought this, if they revealed that this guy had a keeper on him, I would forgive so much of this episode. I would forgive it so greatly because it's like, well, he doesn't have control and maybe he was swayed, and no, he's just an idiot. He's just an idiot. And I'm angry at you, JMS, because he is always very good with giving these one-off or side characters more nuances than just an idiot who generates the plot to happen.
I kind of like that he's an idiot, though. I like that he's that naive, that he can't comprehend.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just a hard pill for me to swallow.
It's stupid, but I kind of like it in the same way.
JMS has an issue for me, which is he has characters do some really idiotic choices, but I have to swallow that pill. Like, we had the discussion with the Babylon boys previously about letting ISN on, and it's like, that's a big pill to swallow in the first place, that the station would do that. But you have to accept it, and a part of it is because Sheridan's an idiot who doesn't know any better and is naive. And here we are. We don't have the benefit of knowing Pharrell, as Ben has jokingly pointed out. He's just a random guy. Like, this isn't somebody that we've built up a relationship enough with where we could wring our hands and jump over the hurdles and forgive it like we do when Sheridan does stupid things. This guy's just some dope who's trusting. And the whole joke is,
how good would it be if it was the same dude that was with her when Ducat died?
Yes. The guy who's like, we need the council vote. The guy who's played by Byron, by the way. We never mentioned that. That's Robin Atkin-Downs. He'll come back. But if it was played by literally anyone we had met before. But no, the thing that also is the joke is the Druck, who this guy is teamed up with, are so obviously evil. That's the thing. They are
people
blatantly
turn
evil.
They're like, ooh, they're scary. Like, people like cower.
I have a
from
fun
them.
fact about that.
Yes. Is this the fact I think it is, Rachel, of why the Druck appear this way?
No.
Okay, so while you get your fun fact, Ben, they have a special effect for the Druck here that is this weird distortion, looping thing. Now, I'm not too sure if you are aware why that is the case, because this never comes back. Like, this effect for them never comes back. It is because the outfit looked too terrible.
That was
special effects director.
That
was
is
like,
absolutely my guess, because I mean, what you see, like you could pretty easily make out what the costume is, and it does, like
it looks bad.
I think Sean or Steve said this. It looks like a Power Rangers villain.
And they will bring this outfit
cheesy.
back in future episodes and in Crusade as an excuse of this is the Drux encounter suit equivalent, but that wasn't the goal here. And you can even tell because the head shape looks very similar to that alien they found in Ship of Tears that was driving the transport vessel with all of the telepaths on it and then had acided himself. You can tell it's a similar look. So it's giving that idea, but the outfit, for whatever reason, was too weird. Now, I do want to praise, though. They got some fucking guy in that outfit. He's like a stunt guy, a mime guy. Like, he does a lot of... He's embodying this freak, and I love that physical performance. He's wiggling all over the place. I had a big laugh. I don't know, Ben, if you noticed this, but there's a moment where Delenn and Pharrell are talking, and it cuts to the Druck, and he's just stroking the translator ball. He's just stroking it like a villain would a cat.
His orb.
I laughed so loud at that. It's just, and he's like leaning back, giving them this disembodied look, like, I'm a freak.
Ben heard it in Chicago.
I didn't know that was the reason, because I did remember. I was like, we never see this affecting, like, when we watched this for the podcast, I was like, I don't remember this blur. Like, obviously we see them again, but I don't remember, like, there being, like,
freaks,
these blurry guys. And so that makes a lot of sense. And it makes me think of, like, how JMS was really dissatisfied with how some of the stuff in the first season looked, like, most specifically Negrath. Like, it was really, really unhappy with how that puppet looked and how, and like, it was just
retired,
like,
the puppet.
Too cheesy. And so he was just like, all right, well, and so, like, in a lot of the creature makeup and costume are really good, especially given the budget they're working for.
I still think they're spectacular for today's standards. I think that you don't get aliens as detailed and emotive today, even in TV shows. And another thing that's interesting is the Druck will return with a much cooler design, and I'm just going to spoil it. My favorite alien design in the show. I love what the Druck look like when we actually get to meet them proper in season 5. It's it's my favorite alien look in the show. So the blurry freak effect is just because it looked bad.
Funny.
John C. Flynn III said, "Nope, that's shit. We need to fix that."
It's very funny. It's so funny. It
Rachel,
really undercuts the scene.
What's your fun fact, Rachel? What have you got for us?
One of the Mbryo seen reacting in fear from the Druck emissary is Dennis Michael, a CNN entertainer reporter and a big fan of the series, who was also as the Narn in Here Comes the Inquisitor.
Oh, yes, I remember that. We had that trivia fact about a random CNN reporter guy was doing a tour of Babylon 5 as like some press junket thing, and they asked him, hey, do you want to be in an episode? And he's like, yeah, sure. And they put him in a non-makeup in a random scene, and Here Comes the Inquisitor. I didn't realize he came back again in season 4. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that is great. I love how many weird celebrity nerds there are for B5. Like that guy who played, what was that radio DJ guy who played the Beatles for the first time in America was in the episode where Babylon 4 returned. He was like the second officer of Babylon 4. It's like, what the hell, man? Like,
and of course, Scott Adams.
Oh, and everyone's favorite, Scott Adams. We haven't gotten to Scott yet.
There's another thing that I want to note for the Druck before we move on.
Ben's amusing himself.
Yeah. Lost Ben. The fact that I love the Lurker's Guide. Like, I don't go there too much.
It's funny how JMS hasn't changed in his replies to things.
Sometimes I go in and I'm like, oh gosh, this website just keeps on giving, and it's so old. So old. But one of the things of note was Sheridan refers to the Drakh as wild cards, and in fact, Drakh is card pronounced backwards.
Oh, fuck off. No. Stop it. It's like that one episode where it's like, Londo gathers his wits about him, the Minister of War, Intelligence, Transportation, and whatever else. It's like, shut up. Don't say that to me. It makes it worse.
And it's card backwards, right?
The Drakh are introduced here. It is card backwards, thank you. I'm never going to... But Delenn says card weirdly then. She's the only one that says it like that, by the way.
Yes.
Mira Falan's the only one that add a little accent to it.
A little spin on it.
It's like how Peter Jurasik's the only cast member that say Ivanova. He just constantly... But then you realize, Londo never has to interact with Ivanova all that often, so you don't notice that he pronounces it differently to everyone else. Because how many plots do they have together, really? Ivanova and Londo? Not really.
Can't think of one. Yeah.
Can't think of a single one.
You must have been mistaken. It's possible.
No. I felt it as soon as I saw him. I have been to Zahadum. I saw the evacuation. We defeated their masters. And now they seek to become masters themselves and destroy those who defeated the shadows.
I'm going to say this will be more true as the show goes on, but I find the Drakh to be a far more scary antagonist than the shadows ever were. Even though they're blurry freaks here, what they actually offer up to the series, I find to be far more of an interesting antagonist as well than the shadows. I just wanted to just say that. Now, Ben, when you, like you said, you remember the Drakh and seeing them here, I mean, what are your thoughts on the Drakh just briefly? Just them in general and just how they're also portrayed here. Like, we have a giggle about them, but they are also just this warning of
collective.
Yes, but they're also a warning of things aren't over. The Shadow War may be over, but there's still ramifications from it. What do you think, Ben?
I think the Drakh are pretty interesting because so like with the shadows, it's kind of they're kind of sinister, and it's this kind of grand like centuries long fight between two powers where like everybody else is just kind of they're just kind of tertiary. It's like they're just kind of dice and little pieces in this board
Getting
game.
Caught in the middle.
With the Drakh, it is explicitly these aliens that have the shadow, like the same capabilities, but they're there and they operate the same way, but they're exclusively working for revenge, which makes them all the more like terrifying and villainous, because it's like with the shadows, it was kind of inexplicable. Who are these guys? What are they up to? What's Morden all about? Like what are they up to? With the Drakh,
what makes them any better than us? Like the shadows and the Vorlons walk around like we're superior, while the Drakh don't even have that. They're just saying, "I hate you," and I want to hurt you.
They're just there to use their remarkable capabilities to extract the greatest amount of suffering, which makes them, a very terrifying villain. And like knowing how things like the viewers at this point know that things are going to go really bad on Minbar on Centauri Prime, but. And they know that the Drakh and their keepers are going to be part of that. But like over the course, like especially like everything you see in the 5th season, like you see like just how really truly monstrous and awful they are, and how scary it is.
They're a nihilistic villain. Because what they believed in got taken away, and now they don't know what to believe in. They have no understanding, and so they're just going to lash out because none of it matters.
But also,
and
what they believe in is chaos.
Yes, and so it feeds into itself. They're a disillusioned villain, and they are in the same place as our heroes, where they understood what things were. They had a hierarchy, and now they don't have that, and they don't know what to do. They're finding their footing, but these guys are being assholes about it. Unpredictable, but cunning nonetheless. They're not idiots. They've learned the mistakes of their masters. They're not going to repeat those, but they're also not sure what they need to do, but they know that they need to get at those. So when you have that moment of Delenn and he reacts to that, it gives you everything you need to know about these antagonists of, oh, they aren't like the Shadows, where the Shadows were just doing this for a big chess piece game. These guys are out for blood. They're out for Delenn, they're out for Sheridan, they're out for all of these folks that screwed them over in the long run because they had a good thing going on, and now they don't, and so no one else should either. Really cool villains. I love them, but they're goofy here. Delenn does end them, though, which is truly excellent. Delenn is just a badass. End this. There's this moment where it's like, the classic Babylon 5 thing of, we got the we got the shit kicked out of us, we'll lick our wounds and go back to Babylon 5. But Delenn says, no, actually, go back. I want to kill them all. I want to murder them, in fact. And I just get such a big smile on my face that Delenn is this character that presents as very serene and very morally good, and, you know, she's the religious character, but she has a side of her that is very aggressive and will wipe a motherfucker out if they cross her path.
Yeah, and especially earlier in that scene, she's just like, I'm not going to make the same mistake as, like, the first time we encountered the humans. But then she's like, nope. We're gonna fuck the rider. We didn't shoot first, so it's fine for me to destroy them this time.
Let's head on over to Mars. It's not, like we said with Racing Mars, the actual Mars plot isn't all that intricate. It is an incident happens, a speech is given, and then it's resolved. But what really makes the Mars plot substantive is the interactions between the characters we have, Franklin, Marcus, Number One, and her fellow Marsies. And I can't help but smile like I did with Racing Mars. Jason Carter and Richard Biggs have an infectious chemistry that is just so magnetic. It upsets me every time we cut away from them. They almost have this Abbott and Costello thing where you see a real plot happening and then it'll pan over and then it's them two commentating on things. And I adored that. There was that moment where Number One was yelling. She was walking off and yelling at somebody, and then the camera panned over and there's Marcus and Franklin just looking on, being like, whoa, I sure wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of that. I'd rather fight the Shadow War. It's just, they have an old school comedy duo nature to them that I just I'm a sucker for it.
Wish we got more of the two of them together, because there's Exogenesis and then there's this plot line, and then do we get that again before the end of the 4th season?
I don't think we get too much of them interacting in a plot line like this, but we do get lots of Franklin reacting to the fact that he's now known Marcus more. And especially when Marcus, you know, leaves the show, we do see how Franklin is upset about that right into the final episode as well. So it's that thing of you want more of it because you didn't know you wanted it in the first place. Like I said this last episode, I didn't know that Marcus and Franklin would be a pairing that I would adore so much. But once you put them together and you make it that Franklin is us, the audience, saying, I find you extremely annoying and you are very, very tiresome, and Marcus saying, I know, but I don't care, is a classic dynamic.
It's a thing that, like, a show with a large ensemble, and this is true of the dramas as well as comedies, like, once you start to get into later seasons, it's pretty important to start, like, just to vary things up, to start breaking up the pairs that you're normally putting characters together in, and start putting together new pairs to just see what happens. And I think this is and this is true again in other shows. Like, you could see this in Cheers, you know, an ensemble show. You could see this in, like, in later seasons of Deep Space Nine. Like, it's just like, oh, we put these two characters together, and the writing is good, but there's something between the two actors where it just clicks. Like, there's just, like, once those two actors hit the stage and the cameras turn on, they have, like, just a little bit of that, like, extra chemistry, which, like, you know, you can't predict that. That's not something that you necessarily know, and just the way that those two actors interact, and of course, like, the writing helps, and the dynamic between them is very naturally lent towards what the two actors are able to give. But it's just really nice to see that these two actors, and as you've let us know, you know, they obviously, like, it's a personal thing where, like, at conventions they gave that seminar, like, they have it, you know.
From
Capital
everything I've heard from JMS, from Jason Carter, from even people I know that have been at conventions with Jason Carter and Richard Biggs, they were just those two guys. That's what their relationship was very much like, where they were the old husband and wife duo, where they would rib each other, but they were always up for a bit of a party and a bit of a laugh. And Richard Biggs was a straight man, and Jason Carter's a wacky guy. And he's just one of those things where Franklin is a character that takes himself very seriously and can often miss things because he's so self-serious.
And he's putting so much pressure on himself.
And Marcus is a character that pretends he doesn't, like, take things super seriously. And so that pairing in itself of just the characters, to remove it from the actors, is gold, because you're going to have Marcus bring Franklin out of his shell. And in turn, it's going to make us notice that Marcus is a deeper character than the show has presented to us for most of the time, but he's always been that deep. Like, Marcus is a character that I think is very abrasive for newcomers, especially for myself. I've mentioned this on the podcast, on yours as well, Ben, that I didn't want this character. He was too foppish. He was too much of a eye candy for certain members of the audience. I found him too much. But what I really think Jason Carter nails here, and he nails throughout the entire thing, is he's very good at having those dramatic asides of Marcus, where he'll just pause and say, hey, you know what? I was having a bit of a laugh there, but this is what I actually think, without it being jarring or disingenuous. Because when we talk about Star Trek Discovery, like, how often does that happen? Where a character's very stupid, like Tilly will say, that's fucking cool, and then the camera will turn around and she'll be like, but I actually have a serious thing to say. And it's so disingenuous. Marcus has that a lot, but I feel like the writing and Jason Carter's performance brings an honesty to it all. Now, Rachel, what were you going to say? And what do you think about the Marcus and Franklin relationship?
I think the point when he's just like, you've got to go after basically happiness when it presents itself to you, is a really keen example of that. Because he's joking around and then he's like, no, go after it. You don't get this all of the time.
Because Marcus is a sad person. He's a person that wants to die. He's willing to sacrifice himself. He's lost a lot. He's endured a lot, but he puts on this facade, this presentation that he's this funny guy and nothing really hurts him, and he's got a joke for everything, and he's a dork. Like, obviously, he would love to have what Franklin has. Like, and not just saying sex, but like genuine passion that is felt between two people, where it's instantaneous. But he's pursuing somebody who is closed off. Ivanova, he's pursuing somebody who's not going to reciprocate that, but he's a romantic, as they joke about in the episode. Like, he's a romantic deep down.
He is a romantic, but he also loves to torture himself. So it makes sense on another level that he's interested in Ivanova because she's so unattainable.
Marcus works better as a mate, as a friend, than the handsome rogue that has the pike and he's running around making quips about things all the time. When he has that just quick fire thing of, you owe me 50 credits, you bastard, I felt so much joy from him saying that more than any other moment that I've had from Marcus up until now, because that just felt real to me. Like, those are two people talking to one another. Those are actual friends. And I just felt that infectious energy. But also, like I said, this has some of my favorite Marcus stuff. You mentioned it. When passion passes you by, when it touches you, make sure to pursue it. We've had many moments where Marcus will just drop something like that, but I feel like it's from a real place. Now, Ben, you've had an interesting journey with Marcus on the podcast. You've said on here and sometimes on yours that you actually like Marcus, but it seems like on your current watch through, he's been an aggravating character. But what do you think about how he is here and just his overall relationship and how he counters Franklin overall?
Well, like it's funny, like when we had Rachel on, because Rachel wanted to be a Marcus defender on our podcast, and then it was on Racing Mars, and we were all like, yeah, we like Marcus. Like in this episode, kind of anticipating like a little bit of maybe an argument or something, and then we watched the episode, and it's like, oh yeah, no, he's fine in this one. It's funny. Like, I think I like Marcus and I don't like Marcus. I think there's, as we kind of talk, he's kind of the avatar for some of JMS's kind of quippiness, which is a taste for some. I think you're kind of right on about that he's a better friend than a romantic figure. I also think it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of other examples, but he kind of, like, I think a little bit of my poor reaction to him is that he feels a little like this stock, quippy, magical British character to American eyes, like where it's like, oh, look at this guy, he's British and he's handsome,
like Bashir.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like there's this trope that I'll see like in American television, and that I'm aware, like, where it's just like, oh, it's like, oh, this fascinating British man, and he's
like Buffy.
So yeah. Like, the thing is that I'm talking around in Buffy because I never watched Buffy, but I know that's
Well, there's two of them. There's Anthony Stewart Head, and then there's Spike. So you get two of your little creepy British handsome boys. But you're right, and Doctor Who just exists like that. And it's British already.
It's like, or like David Tennant. Like, obviously that is a British production. And I don't have any. I think David Tennant is a perfectly good Doctor Who.
But David Tennant in America in general, like Good Omens and stuff. Like, David Tennant's career out even in America or American productions is very much like look, he's a little sexy, slinky British man. Here he's in Fright Night.
Well, they didn't they flip it? I didn't actually watch this, but don't they kind of subvert that in like one of the Marvel shows? Like, doesn't he play a creep?
Oh, he's an American, and he's a bad dude. He's great in that, but that's the thing. He's great in that.
Yeah,
but I get what you're saying. Like, there's this obsession with like the handsome British smart aleck who walks around and they say Monty Python-esque quotes at you because that's what Americans think of the Brits. And wouldn't it be fun to add that flavor to the cast because we have all of these American voices? So if we have a sexy little British man, we've diversified. It's like,
like, there was this interesting essay I read a while ago about, like, written by like a British expatriate that lives here in has lived here in the US for some time, and was just kind of like the version that we Americans have in our mind of the UK is like absolutely at odds. Like, though it's also something that's intentionally constructed, like, as an export. Like it's both an export and like it's not something that we invented ourselves entirely. But like when I see Marcus, I kind of see like JMS kind of buying into that, especially because that as he's constantly saying, when somebody dies and they're definitely dead on the news groups and as collected on the Lurker's Guide, whenever someone dies, he says like he's an ex-Kefir. So JMS is someone that loves Monty Python crap.
That'll be 50 credits. No, don't you start 50, with me, Marcus. 50. Don't. Come on, you cheap bastard.
Marcus, look.
Oh, sorry. Gotta go. Guard duty.
I think it is time to turn on our Spotlight, the part of the show where we go over an actor or actress who appeared in the given episode, big role, small role, minor, recurring, and what was that? About a dumb joke. Oh, you want me to say the dumb joke? Ben, have you ever watched the Michael Keaton film Spotlight by any chance?
I have not.
Well, it's a very impactful film, very moving, and it has a lot of wonderful performances in it. Just like this episode of B5 has many performances in it.
The Catholic boy hasn't watched it.
Oh, Ben hasn't. Yeah, Ben's a guilty Catholic, hasn't watched Spotlight.
Don't you
want to hear Michael Keaton do an accent?
Ooh.
He does he does a little. I think he's supposed to be a Chicago accent. I'm pretty sure too. I think he does a. He does a. If I'm not, I think it is. He does this bit. It's in the trailer. I'll play it as an audio clip in the episode right now.
Spotlight.
He says spotlight, but he says it like spotlight. And it's just so weird. He just has this weird inflection because it's like the Mike Keaton already has a recognizable voice, but then you add an accent on top of that, and it's like even weirder. It's kind of like him in Jackie Brown, where he's doing a bit of an accent, a bit of a voice, but it's also like he's not really. It's like, I'm doing something here. It's like, yeah, Michael, you're a great actor. But we're talking about somebody who appeared in this episode. And Rachel, who are we going over? Who are we going over today?
We are speaking about an actress who has several guest spot appearances on the show. 7, I believe, in total.
Yes.
Unless I've miscounted. Marjorie Monaghan as number 1.
/ Tessa. We'll find out her name later in the show is Tessa. Tessa
does also have a last.
Holleran.
Yes.
Holleran. Is it sad that I remember that, but not your phone number, Rachel? Just think about that for a bit. Like if I'm in a dire situation, I have somebody else's phone. I'm like, I need to call my wife. I wouldn't know how, but it's like, Ryan, you're in a dire situation. Tell me number 1's name. It's Tessa Holleran, everyone. It's like, yay, we all cheer. Now, I'm just gonna rip the Band-Aid off here. Babylon 5 fans, I know that a lot of you don't like this performance. I've heard a lot of shit talk about this performance over the years. I've never felt that. I've always been completely okay with her performance. I like her. I have no harsh feelings towards her. I think she's good. She has presence. I think she genuinely had the way she communicates it through the character. I believe that she has a sexual attraction towards Franklin. Even at the end of this episode, where it's a joke ending, where it's like, oh, we hear her moan out his name. I still think that the actress walks around as this character with a strength and embodiment of this woman who's no nonsense. I like the performance. I know that there have been many people who don't, but I hear those things and I just don't see it as strongly, especially, at this point in the show. I think she's pretty decent. Ben, do you have any thoughts on number 1 and the character and the performance overall?
That's interesting. I had no idea that her performance was kind of frowned upon by folks. I think she's perfectly fine. It's neither she doesn't stand out to me as like one of the greats, but it's also, I don't think it's a bad performance. It's honestly quite strange to me that she has there's a handful of performances in this show that I could think of where I'm like, ooh, not good. But like,
you interviewed one of them.
It's fine. She's fine. I don't know. Like, she's a recurring character that's interesting. I think she does a good job.
She has to play both the hard-ass freedom fighter, but somebody who's willing to care about the cost of human lives and make compromises. And I think she She captures that. I think she captures that without betraying the other aspects. Like when she's standing there, like that whole moment where she talks about how Franklin's a liar, but you're my type of liar.
Yep.
I think she just hits that out of the park. I'm like, she's playing multiple things there, but I think she captures it. Rachel, what about you? Number 1, Tessa. Do you have major thoughts on this performance or the character overall?
I also didn't know that it was looked down upon. I've always enjoyed her performance, especially when she comes back and the way that she bounces off Franklin when they're kind of having the conversation of like, yeah, this isn't going to work out, is it?
No.
This isn't going to be a thing anymore. And we're both kind of sad about it, but we both accept it.
It is interesting how she, at the end of the series, takes over Garibaldi's position. She's the one that steps up and becomes the new Garibaldi. And when I think about that, I can see that. I can see how that makes sense. When I watched it that first time, I'm like, I only saw it as oh, cool, they brought a character I know back as that. But like, I look at her and I think about where she goes as her journey throughout the series. I go, yeah, I can see that because you're rough around the edges, but you have a specific convictions to you
and
that you operate through, and you get shit done. And well, Garibaldi just lived on Mars. He's not from Mars.
Yeah, no, he's from Earth.
You know who was from Mars? Sinclair.
He
was from Mars. He was from Mars, and so that's another thing. Brief thing, we don't really like. There's only so much you can do this because we know why Michael Hare couldn't stay. But there's that moment in this where they make a point that Sheridan is not a friend of Mars. He was a bad person during the Mars riots. The things that we heard about in The Gathering, that was like Takashima's backstory. We heard about in The Gathering, and what I always think about is this whole Mars angle would have really hit, I think, a lot harder if it was Sinclair, because Sinclair was from Mars and he had opinions about Mars and he was he was for them, but also he had to smack them on the hand a couple of times earlier in the show. But, you can only do with what you got and you have to differentiate them. And hey, this is one of those attempts from JMS to say, hey, Sheridan's a shitty dude for some people out there. And I'm like, yeah, but I've seen him in the rest of the episode where he's like a smiley dude. So it's always a toss-up of how much the show can actually succeed at making me think that Sheridan's a shitty dude. Now, Rachel, have you seen this actor in anything else?
Yes. I've seen her in a bunch of things.
She doesn't have the longest IMDb.
24 credits.
But I've seen her in so many things. I'm surprised at how much of her work I've actually consumed.
Okay. So she was in a Star Trek, and we're going to get to that, but she was also considered for a primary role in a Star Trek.
Do you know who this was, Ben? Do you know who she was up for?
I did not know that.
If you had to take a guess, now, she was in Voyager, so it could be a late Voyager role or Enterprise role. Who do you think she could have done?
Well, okay. So it feels like that's a hint. It's a late. Well, the thing is so
because she's in season 1 of Voyager.
She's in season 1 of Voyager, which means that it's possible that she auditioned for a part in the main cast, and they're like, no, but here's your consolation prize, like Okona. Got to, he auditioned for Riker and he gets a one-off instead.
Or William Morgan Shepard was a second choice for Jakar, and so he got Soul Hunter and then he got to play Jakar's uncle.
Or Tom Booker was the second choice for Veer.
Right?
And he gets Jinxo. Anyway, a beautiful consolation prize.
So, what you guess,
anyway,
Ben?
So it's not Cass, who's you, so... Then what, did she audition for, you said potentially late Voyager or Enterprise, so did she audition for 7?
No.
Nope.
Okay. Then for Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Come on.
Very telling, there.
There's not too many female roles.
I was going to say,
did not think this would be a long
Hoshi.
No, not Hoshi. It's T'Pol. She was up for T'Pol.
She auditioned for T'Pol. Yeah,
she was up for T'Pol. She was like second or runner up for that, and I could see that actually because
I could see it. But Jolene, they cast the correct woman for that.
Here's the thing. Ben and I disagree about the portrayal of T'Pol. We'll leave it there. I'm not a big fan, so we'll leave it there. But what I'm saying is I can definitely see that
I feel sorry for that
because
actress. She was so excited to play a Vulcan, and they were like, no, we're mostly interested in just showcasing your body. And she was like...
That was Enterprise. Hey, Scott Bakula, you know how you're known for having on-screen charismatic charm and everything? Nope.
Speaking of...
you could
we can go down the rabbit hole for years
all
to
the missed
come.
opportunities of Star Trek Enterprise. It's
Excuse me, but speaking of Scott Bakula...
Yes, she was in Quantum Leap.
Quantum Leap. Do you know
she was in Quantum Leap? Oh, that makes sense.
She was in an episode where Bakula had to jump into the body of someone to try and stop a supermodel from ODing.
And she was that supermodel.
She was the supermodel.
Good for her.
Yeah, that's a big role. And I remember that one. That's a sad episode, obviously, but it's a good episode.
So she's been in a number of like military or authoritative figure kind of roles.
That's why I was going to mention Quantum Leap was her second role was Quantum Leap. And I was going to mention that it is very different because she is far more, overtly feminine-y as a character, like far more, girly-esque, and she has a higher pitched voice and she's more flailing. Well, I'm used to her, like we just said, with potentially being up for a mostly closed off role in Enterprise.
Yeah.
These women who are far more...
Her character in Voyager is very much like that as well.
Yes, these characters who have a certain emotional range to them, and you get that here in Babylon 5, where she's closed off in a lot of ways, and I can definitely see like she was in JAG and Law and Order and stuff of that nature, where she has to play these.
Her first credit was Help,
which I'm not familiar with.
In 1990, so she was 26.
Okay,
when she landed that. And bless, her official website is still up.
Yeah.
Oh.
So.
But has it not been like touched in many years?
Is
this one of those?
In so long.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, I gotta.
This was part of what they had to say about that. The show also starred Wesley Snipes, John Mahoney, and John Spencer, and was the first of 2 times that Marjorie would play a firefighter. So far.
Yeah, so far.
She could do it still. It's never. You can't take that off the table. But that's interesting to hear how old she was during that, because in B5, she's in her 30s by this point. One of the things I've always thought about number 1 is she just has a very fresh-faced look to her. I've always thought like she was like in her early 20s. Like I always was like, that was one of the things that really put me off when I saw her. It was like, oh, the leader of the head of the Mars Resistance is this woman who's just fresh out of high school. Like she has a very young look to her because she's very pale skinned, the long blonde hair.
She's born in 64.
So, she's around the same age as pretty much everyone else, but it's just one of those things where she just has and the cast of B5, when you look at their ages, it'll really just screw with your brain about how like this character's playing this age and all of this, and they're actually this age, and it's always crazy that Michael O'Hare and Sinclair were in their mid to late 30s.
Yes.
I always thought he was like 49.
No. Do you want to go with Becca or Murder, She Wrote next?
We've got to go with Murder, She Wrote. Now, Ben, you are deeply familiar with how Babylon 5 and JMS has a history with Murder, She Wrote, correct?
Yep, of course. Yeah.
So a lot of the cast were brought in from Murder, She Wrote, a lot of these secondary cast members, and even some of the mains, like Jeff Conaway was on Murder, She Wrote a few times, and JMS was a writer on Murder, She Wrote. He helped kind of save the show in a bit of a dry patch period in season 8, I want to say. So she's in a season 8 episode, but not written by JMS. Written by who, Rachel? Larry DiTilio. I didn't even remember that he wrote episodes of Murder, She Wrote, but it makes sense because Larry and JMS, right up until whatever happened midway through season 2, were joined at the hip. They were always bringing each other on projects together. They were real like brothers in arms in that way. But I was happy to see that she was somebody that had this connection to the B5 world before with something like Murder, She Wrote. Another thing that has to be brought up, Rachel, is Space Rangers. Are you familiar with Space Rangers? Short-lived, 6-episode show got cancelled after the first episode.
And I know who's in this.
She was the lead. She was the lead in Space Rangers. It had Clint Howard in it.
That does make me wonder if...
Had Ivanova in it.
I was going to say, this is... I read that her into Babylon 5 was actually her relationship with Claudia.
Yeah. Because they
which
worked
would
on
also
that.
make sense.
They worked on that together, and she was the lead of Space Rangers. Not a good show. I've seen it because it was on TV. Ben, this will delight you. On Australian TV on Channel 7, they would play at like 3:00 on a Sunday afternoon Sliders and Space Rangers.
Wow.
Which just tells you what they think the quality of Sliders is like.
Of Space Rangers, so it's like you're in 5 seasons of Sliders. So
bad seasons too, and one little 6-episode run of Space Rangers.
So
just makes me go ahead. Sorry.
No, you finish what you were saying.
He's going to go on a Sliders moan.
No, it just makes me think about how when I was a kid, for some reason, Nickelodeon would play. I think on Friday nights. I forget what night, but they played. I think this was an Australian show. I might have talked about this on here once. They used to play The Tomorrow People, which I believe that's an Australian show. And all I remember about that show was it was very strange. That's my only memory of it.
We also know that the network that Babylon 5 was on, one of the big shows that they were launching off before B5 was Time Tracks, which was also an Australian production. So Australian sci-fi and random shows would come over. There was the Australian fever back in the 80s to 90s.
Yeah.
Remember that episode of The Simpsons?
Well, yeah, they specifically call... I mean, I always think about that episode of The Simpsons, of course.
Hey, Mr. Prime Minister! Andy!
Aye, mate. What's a good word?
Well, the last one that I particularly wanted to note was her appearance in Becca.
Mm-hmm. Ben's favourite show.
Mm-hmm.
In a season 2 episode as Amanda, who's one of Reggie's friends.
Oh, yeah.
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 Reggie's the owner, right? No.
Yeah. Yeah, the Dax from Deep Space Nine. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to call her Dax, and I was like, no, that's not right.
Terry Farrell.
So she's an old friend of Reggie's that comes into town, is like way more successful than Reggie, and makes her feel really jealous. And then she has a great line, which is like, Reggie asks about her husband, and she's just like, oh, he's scuba diving with the dog sitter in the Bahamas.
Oh, nice.
And then she says, I got the dog, he got the bitch.
You can see her saying that. She's good.
And she gets to have sex with Becca multiple times.
She was a sci-fi actor. She did a number of science fiction things. She did a couple of episodes of Andromeda, talking about, Star Trek stuff, and that's kind of a Gene Roddenberry offshooty thing, and you got Kevin Sorbo there, and you got a whole bunch of stuff. Andromeda's that series where I know it exists. I swear I've probably seen a handful of episodes of it, but I have no memory of it, and I have no inclination to watch it. But I know it exists. And it's always one of those things where it's funny to me when you go on IMDb and it says shows like this, and you go and say Battlestar Galactica, and it will show you Andromeda, because they're also a bunch of losers in grey jumpsuits looking sad, but it's like they're drastically different shows. I think they're very different.
I think Andromeda is one of those shows... and I haven't watched it, so I could be completely wrong. But my understanding is it's one of those shows where like the first and second seasons are like completely different, like a Sequest type situation, where they jumped in, like the network jumped in, was like, all right, well, we don't like this. Let's make it a completely different show.
Like
I think
Sliders.
it's one of those.
Like Sliders.
Sliders in the third season, yeah.
Yeah. Now,
I have 2 other things.
Yes, please.
Just want to note that she got married for the first time in 2011, so she was almost 50 when she got married, which I think is cool.
She was too busy freeing Mars.
Yeah, and she got married to Grant Rosenberg, who's apparently an American novelist and I think screenwriter maybe as well.
That's neat. Now, Ben, are you at all familiar with any of the things in her catalog, or is it just Voyager?
It's just, I mean, maybe in my life I have watched that episode of Murder, She Wrote that she was in, but I am not familiar with that, unfortunately. I see she did have an appearance in Cheers, so I probably saw that one as well. But yeah, Voyager, like when I saw that she was the actor we'd be discussing, I was like, oh, Voyager, I'll watch some of Voyager.
What a mistake that was.
She's fun.
It's a fun episode.
It's the Beowulf episode.
Okay. Yeah,
you know who
the holodeck one with the Doctor.
Well, yes, but did you notice, Ben, who else was in that episode of Voyager right alongside her as as the antagonistic Viking figure? It was
who was it? I'm
was
sure.
the freak from and the Sky Full of Stars who invaded Sinclair's brain.
Oh,
who would then later be in Enterprise as the head Nazi alien thing that happened for like an episode or two in season 4.
The season 4 premiere.
Yes, Christopher Neame, who's also in Doctor Who and a bunch of things, but it's good to connect back. Like they were in Babylon 5 and Voyager at the same time, and they walked off. And I want to say I find her fun in Voyager because it's very different. She's being silly in that one. She's over the top. She's the strong lady. She's Freya. She's the warrior lady. And I just have a ball watching Robert Picardo just play dress up and run around with a sword and eat a turkey leg that's the size of his head. Like
it's fun.
Voyager is a show that I like, and I have to defend when I say that, but I cannot be denied, especially especially with Robert Picardo, when Voyager wants to be funny, it's really fucking weird and how it's funny. Like when I have argued this until Lower Decks, I would say Voyager was unironically the funniest Star Trek show. Like it would be consistently funny. It's just weird. Like it's just weird. And that episode is one of the first overtly comedic episodes of Voyager.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I mean, you have Picardo there, and he's on the Mount Trekmore for sure. Robert Picardo, he's just so funny.
You can't have a Joe Dante film without Picardo in there, or Dick Miller.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be right. Wouldn't be right.
But we only got Dick Miller shows up in Voyager too, right? I know he's in DS9.
I'd have to look over the Dick Miller catalog. I can't remember. There's an exploitation film he was in, I think Evil Toons, where it's his character's watching a Dick Miller movie. Like it's a movie with him in it because it was like public domain because, Dick Miller's in a lot of things. Or there's a movie too where it's like he's a cowboy and he's shooting at some Native Americans and it's so cheap that when it cuts to the Native Americans, one of them is Dick Miller. Like it's just, look, is this a spotlight for Dick Miller? Yes, it is.
But he's not on Babylon 5, unfortunately.
Who would you have made Dick Miller play? I have one role and one role only, but I'm curious if you have any ideas.
Well, I kind of want to guess who your role is because I could either see him as one of the view from the gallery guys.
You got it. Nailed it. Done, dusted. That was it. There's no one else.
The other one I would have thought he could play, and this, to be clear, the actor that they had here was perfect, and I wouldn't want to replace him.
Can I guess yours?
Yeah, your guess. You know it.
I don't, but maybe. I was going to guess in the episode where Bob Kelso from Scrubs was an evil Earth captain. That's later in season 4.
No, not him, but he would be good there. We just watched that one.
Dick Miller would be excellent there.
And Dick Miller, I was thinking the mailman.
Why don't we want to make him an alien?
He would be a really fun alien, but you want to see his face. He's got such
Could he please be Katasha? I just want to see him go crazy. He's always so mild-mannered, Dick Miller. Like, Dick Miller can be crazy, but he's always so, like I'm a gruff blue-collar guy.
Mm-hmm.
Look, in a universe, he could have been Garibaldi. Could you imagine Dick Miller as Garibaldi? That would have been the dream come
true. Not a problem. That'd be such
He wouldn't be Garibalding anymore.
Well, yeah, no, he'd be holding on to all that luscious Dick Miller head of hair.
That luscious Dick Miller head of hair. Are we ready to give our ratings? No, Rachel, we've got one or two more facts. Give us the facts.
Well, now it feels
just give us some.
I have a quote from the Lurker's Guide and then another one from her website. This one's from the Lurker's Guide. If number one indeed treats all her former lovers like she treated Philippe, Franklin may be in for a rough ride.
He loves him rough. He does. He never has like a positive ride with relationships. He always likes them a bit rough.
And this one is a bit of a longer one from her website, from what apparently she was currently doing whenever this was last updated. Living in the Los Angeles area, Marjorie is developing a new television series and is beginning to do some writing. She continues to sing and is currently learning to play the guitar. Always an avid reader, she enjoys studying archetypal mythology, Celtic history, and many other topics, esoteric or otherwise. She practices yoga, loves to travel, and once she finalizes her dual citizenship, would love to work in Europe.
Awesome. That's truly, truly amazing. I adore that. We did mention this at the last episode, but I think it is good to solidify and clarify it. And maybe Ben will have a disagreement here. We said very confidently, because of the ending of this episode, that Franklin is a guy, when he has sex, he spanks. Do you still stand by that, Rachel? Do you think Franklin is a spanker?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I do stand by that. But with that kind of moan that she gives...
That's a finger moan.
That's a finger
That's
moan.
a finger bang. That's a finger bang moan.
Yeah.
Marjorie, thanks for the line delivery, because I could tell that was a finger bang moan. Thank you.
Or maybe a very well-placed kiss, like the teasing kind.
A kiss in a certain location. Ben, thoughts? Franklin, is he a spanker?
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
He sounds so dismayed by I could see it.
I could see that.
Medically, he's a spanker.
I mean, he's, he's a very kind of buttoned down, kind of very serious-headed professional. So, so he probably has
Richard Biggs plays him with a lot of aggression in this episode, so you got to get that aggression out on some cheeks.
Oh, Steven.
With all of that wonderful discussion about our actor of choice for the spotlight and many others.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you first, Ben. On our scale of Yum being bad and Yum being good, what do you give lines of communication?
I give this a mid Yum.
Yum.
It's a mid, as the kids say.
I was going to say, Ben's one of the youths these days. He's saying mid, and I know that Ben's old. So, you see, he said it in an old man voice. Yeah.
Me saying it like this is, as the kids say, cringe.
I was going to give this a Yum, but talking about it and really enjoying what we were going through, but also just before this, I was looking at some of the scenes. I had a smile on my face. I could not stop smiling when watching it, and I think there's something to be said about that. And so I give it a Yum.
Yum.
It brought me joy. I had a great time. This isn't a heady episode. This isn't one that game changers. This isn't one that you're going to say is in your top 5 episodes of the show, but it's a good episode.
Yeah, it's just solid. But it's weird because I don't think of it as a good episode, but it's not a bad episode. But I enjoyed it. So it ends up being a Yum for me as well.
Yum.
I need to hear what we're talking about next time on Babylon 5.
On the next Babylon 5.
I've given Ben the DVD description, the definitive description of an episode, a description that tells us everything that the episode is about. Unless it's a Delenn plot, then we exclude that. Now, Ben, what are we talking about next time?
Next time on Babylon 5, conflicts of interest. Hoping to sway the non-aligned worlds to his side, Sheridan seeks an agreement from two ambassadors who rarely agree on anything, Malari and Jakar. The voice of resistance debuts. Doesn't say the resistance.
No.
Trip me up.
No.
Voice of resistance.
Yeah, the voice of resistance. So,
I wanna, unless you transcribed that incorrectly.
No, I double checked.
Yeah.
JMS wrote that, so thank you.
Yeah, I wanted
tired.
to get that exactly right. I wanted to give it
So
correct
he's a
read.
tired man, and here's the thing I love about that description. I've seen this episode before, obviously. Ben has talked about it on his podcast. What a misleading description. Because it makes it sound like, Jakar and Londo are going to be... They're like one scene. Like that whole thing about getting them... That episode's a Garibaldi episode. It doesn't even mention Garibaldi.
More of a plot in the next episode. Londo and Jakar having to make an agreement and discuss with each other.
This next one, conflicts of interest, is Garibaldi gets a new job and he finds out his girlfriend is a client and blah.
Is this the Duck Amuck episode?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Look, Ben,
so,
if you could please
Garibaldi
write to
episode.
JMS, could you please write to JMS? Please update the description to be Garibaldi watches Duck Amuck. That's the plot. And that is all we have got for you.
It needs a meanwhile, though.
It needs... Meanwhile, Lise is back. Meanwhile, the voice of... that random voice actor is in the episode too. The guy from...
Invader Zim.
Invader Zim.
And Raz from Psychonauts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that is all we have got for you when it comes to lines of communication. Mm-hmm. It has been a pleasure talking to you, Ben. Now, where can everyone in the solar system find the Last Best Babylon 5 podcast?
You could find us at Last Best B5 on Twitter and Instagram, and that's also our Gmail address.
So if you're from Neptune, you can email Ben, okay?
And if you have any answers to help them in their investigation, that email address is also their current tip line.
Yeah.
Yep. They need answers. Deeply, the answers need to be given to them. What are the answers for? You have to listen to the Last Best Babylon 5 podcast on any podcasting hosting site of your choice. So that is them plugged. Now, to plug ourselves, we are also on all of those podcasting sites under YumYumPod or YumYumPodcast. We are also on YouTube, where we occasionally upload the episodes regularly, but we occasionally upload some bonus things. We put up there the Jeff Griggs scene from his porno, the dialogue scene, of course. We're tasteful. And it's very funny, and I recommend you give it a watch. It's a good chuckle to see him give the Dan Randall performance. We are also on Patreon, where we are talking about so many things. We're talking about the Alien franchise right now every month. We have been talking about Space Above and Beyond. We finished it. We've gone all the way through it, from the back to the front, from the front to the back. We've even given a series recap so you can hear what Rachel thinks about a show that she hadn't seen before until I sat her down and said, watch it. Mm-hmm. Watch it. Look how many weird actors that are in this were also in Seinfeld and also will go on to be in Twin Peaks: The Return for some reason. Watch Space Above and Beyond with me, my wife, and you guys can pay for that pleasure over at our Patreon. This is all in the description. Same with our email address, yumyumpod@gmail.com. Now, this episode had almost everything you could want from a B5 episode, but there was somebody missing.
Yeah, we didn't discuss who had YYE.
Who would have said Yum Yum in this episode, Ben?
I would say that number one moans it at the end.
If she did, wouldn't that be awesome? Yum Yum, Stephen. Yeah, it's number one. I had that in my notes. Number one. Maybe a contender could have been given to the Druck because he was a freak. He was a little freaky guy.
Yeah, he's close.
It's sad that he isn't the winner, but he's a close contender. Now, Jakar was not in this episode. I didn't see him. He could have been hiding in a bush, and I wouldn't have seen him. So I guess I have to say it for him, as do you, as does Ben. The farewell that is canon, because the gathering is canon. the non-farewell of good eating to you.
Good eating to you.
Good eating to you.
That was way more droll.
Yeah, that's your droll voice.
Good evening to you. Yeah, no.
Next up on Saturday Night Live.
Mr. Cannonball Day.